Hello! Welcome back to Lergle Stories. My name's Logan and I'm glad you're here. Today we're carrying on with Anthony Ant by Linda Dennis. Last time we read chapters 7 and 8, so today we're going to be starting on chapter 9 and reading chapter 10 as well. If you haven't seen any of the chapters for Anthony Ant so far, they're all on the Lergle Stories YouTube channel, so you'll be able to go there and check them out. And while you're there, click subscribe so you don't miss any more. A big thank you, before we start, to Austin Macauley Publishers for letting us read this book today. Last time, Anthony Ant was waiting for some forager ants. He was going to go and help them gather some food. But because he didn't have his pocketbook with him, there was nobody there. He couldn't check any of his arrangements, so he just has to wait around and wait to see if anyone turns up to meet him. So that's where we left him. Let's start chapter 9, which is called The Good Deed. Turning a corner by an old silver birch tree, which had uprooted itself, there was a sudden cry for help. Anthony looked all around him, but couldn't see anyone. Again, someone cried for help and shouted that they were over by the dry stone wall. Anthony headed towards the wall and spotted a forager ant that he recognized as the father of one of his twin sisters Annabelle's friends. Unfortunately, the poor forager ant had somehow got stuck in the wall between the dry stones. Dry stone walls are very skillfully put together, and although exceptionally neat, some of the spaces between each stone can be quite tight. This is particularly true if you are trying to find a way out once you have crawled in. Of course. It had definitely damaged one of his legs and would need immediate first aid. There was a first aider ant base just at the entrance of the colony by the tree stump, so Anthony told the forager ant to hang on, as he would be back with assistance in a matter of minutes. Anthony brought back help immediately, and the first aiders put the forager ant, who was called Adrian, incidentally, onto a stretcher and carefully carried him back to the base. Anthony accompanied them as an escort, and also because he wanted a word with this forager ant. Anthony waited a while for the poor forager ant to see the doctor. The doctor confirmed that Adrian's back leg was broken and that he would have to put on a special splint-type device for a few weeks to enable it to mend properly. While Adrian sat waiting for all this to be organised, Anthony decided to ask him a few questions. He asked if he knew where all the other forager ants were that morning when they were supposed to meet him at the tree stump. Adrian took a deep breath and looked Anthony straight in the eyes. He told him that nobody was there because he had said that Anthony had sent a message and they were to meet him at the old oak tree instead, which was further into the woods. Anthony stared at Adrian in astonishment and couldn't take in what he had just said. What was going on here? He thought, totally bewildered. Adrian then explained that he had been asked to do this by Adam and Alex Ant as a means of getting Anthony into trouble for not carrying out his duties. Just at that moment, Special Advisor Aaron Ant stormed in. He was shouting so much that the poor doctor ant, who had just popped out of his surgery to call Adrian in, had to quickly spring onto a chair. Why? Because ants hear by feeling vibrations on the ground through their feet. Hence, the doctor ant was positively vibrating all over. So to stop himself feeling dangerously dizzy, he took refuge on a chair. Special Advisor Aaron Ant realized immediately what was wrong with the doctor and started to speak more normally. The doctor climbed down from the chair and beckoned Adrian into his surgery, leaving the other two ants staring at each other. Special Advisor Aaron Ant wanted to know why Anthony was not helping the forager ants with the collection of food, and indeed where they were, as he could see no sign of them. Anthony started to splutter, but before he could make any sensible comment, a first aid worker walked by and thanked Anthony for all the help he'd given them and for alerting them in the first place, enabling them to assist the injured ant. Adrian Ant was a lucky ant indeed, he said. Special Advisor Aaron Ant looked at Anthony with a much more pleasant face and was calm and spoke quietly when he'd said that he'd done an honourable job going to the rescue of the forager ant and that he was very proud of his actions. He said that he would recommend him for the Good Samaritan Award this month. Anthony thanked him and said he must return to the old oak tree in the woods, which is where he now knew the forager ants were. With a sigh of relief, he walked out of the first aid base and headed towards the woods. Well, phew! I'm glad that in that last second, Anthony saw that he'd done something very good. Because those two other ants had played a cruel trick on Anthony, and it could have got him into a lot of big trouble. But luckily, he'd helped out. And instead, Special Advisor Aaron Ant was proud of him instead of very angry. Chapter 10. All is revealed. Anthony realized that there had been a planned plot against him, but he was not completely certain who was behind it. Adrian had told him that Adam and Alex Ant had asked him to give the forager ants false instructions, so Anthony would be in trouble for not carrying out his duties. Anthony thought that there was more to all of this, and was not clear as to who exactly was against him in this way, or why. What he did know was that he was going to find out, and quickly, before things got any worse. Anthony decided to tackle the cleaner ant, whom he usually saw every morning, as he felt there was something strange about his behaviour towards him the other day. The main concern, however, was where Anthony's pocketbook was. He needed to find this smartly, as he had too much to lose if this wasn't found. The next morning, he got ready, as usual, and sat down to his breakfast of dried insects and plant sap. Whilst Anthony was chewing diligently on the dried insects, his mind was rehearsing a conversation he was about to have with the cleaner ant. He was feeling quite nervous about this, but he knew he needed to take the bull by the horns, so to speak. That means to just get on with it. He didn't want any problem this morning with security codes for the various checkpoints he needed to access, so Anthony had contacted the soldier ant that assisted him yesterday and asked him for all the codes and recorded them on a sheet of paper. Very good idea. He folded this neatly and placed it in his inside jacket pocket and hoped he wasn't tempting fate by putting it in the same place as his pocketbook. Anyway, he was now nearly ready to leave and could only think about confronting the cleaner ant to ask if he knew what was going on. Anthony stepped out of his soldier quarters and carefully locked the front door. He headed rapidly down the corridor ahead and tried to look as far into the distance as he could to see if the cleaner ant was on his way back home. It wasn't until he was nearly at the gate of the first checkpoint that he saw the cleaner ant walking very slowly towards him. Anthony quickened his pace and was ready to interrogate him. But something stopped him in his tracks, as he could clearly see now that the cleaner ant was injured. "What has happened to you? Are you all right?" Anthony shrieked. The cleaner ant lifted his head, and Anthony could clearly see he had a very swollen eye, and the eyelid had completely closed. Anthony asked him who had done this to him, and at that point, the cleaner ant, whose name was Austin, dropped to his knees and just poured out his story. It transpired that Austin was one of the partners in crime with Adam and Alex Ant. He had blown up the paper bag to make a loud bang to mimic a gunshot or explosion. He was also the one who had taken the pocketbook from the inside pocket of Anthony's jacket when he was knocked out on the ground. Anthony was now sitting on the ground with Austin, as it became evident that Austin could hardly stand due to the injuries to his legs. Although Anthony was very angry, upset, and sickened to hear that it was Austin who had done these things, he was also concerned how Austin had ended up in this state and why. Austin went on to explain that he was unhappy about joining forces with Adam and Alex Ant in the first place, but he owed them a favour for sorting out some bullying incident involving his daughter. His daughter was suffering serious depression from what was going on at school and had very few friends. One very loyal friend was Anthony's twin sister, Annette, but Anthony did not know about the school bullying incident. Austin told them Adam and Alex Ant were planning to create more trouble for Anthony and were thinking how they could ruin his reputation and get him dismissed from the Special Soldier Protection Team. Austin had said that he didn't want to be involved again, and though the whole thing was extremely unkind and unnecessary, as Anthony was only trying to do his job to the best of his ability. At which point, Adam and Alex Ant flew into a rage and attacked him, hence Austin's swollen eye and bruised and cut legs. Anthony was on a later duty this morning, but had set off early to catch and speak to Austin, so the least he could do now was to walk him home and make sure he was all right. Austin thanked him and kept saying how sorry he was for what he had done. Anthony was very accepting of his apologies and didn't bear grudges, but he was going to get to the bottom of this whole incident and get his pocketbook back. My goodness, the other ants sound like real bullies to me. You make sure that if you're ever being bullied, you always tell someone, your teacher, your mummy, daddy, or a carer. Don't ever let it happen to you without telling someone. We don't want to get into any sort of trouble like Anthony's been in. Even Anthony's being bullied. And Austin. These ants are bad news. But Anthony's still trying to find his pocketbook, so he's still soldiering on. Let's hope he finds it. I really, really hope he finds it. Let's find out maybe next time. See you next time. Bye.